Welcome back to the NFL Trades Podcast, the podcast where we bring up trending NFL topics and break them down for your enjoyment. Today's podcast will be just going over the power rankings that I have made for week 3, going into week 4. Little recap of week 3. We have 2 3-0 teams, the Dolphins and the Eagles. And we still have two winless teams. They have the Raiders who are 0-3, and we have the Texans who are 0-2-1. So basically, I'm going to be going through my power rankings that I've made based off record and how I see the teams compared to other teams with the same record as them. So I'm not going to penalize a team if I think if they have a good record, I'm not going to penalize them because I think they're not as good as someone that has a lower record. I just don't like that when we're early on. Maybe down the road you can start doing that, but I don't like when these pages or NFL pages just do power rankings based off what they believe was the better team. So even if a better team they believed was really good is doing bad, and they have a lower record than someone that they thought they didn't perceive as good. So, for example, like the Jaguars are 2-1, and the Chargers are 1-2. But before yesterday's game or Sunday's game, people wouldn't have put Jaguars in front of Chargers no matter what. But since they have a higher record, I'm not gonna just penalize them for it, and they just beat on the Chargers. So I mean, Chargers were injured a lot, but that's besides the point. And again, I don't truly like early power rankings, but I just like putting these teams in order, just kind of get a sense of where they're at record-wise, and then kind of divisional wise as well. So let's just dive right into these power rankings. So the Raiders are. So I put them in tiers as well. So I think by the end of the season, the Raiders are going to be middle of the pack. But right now, I have them at 32, simply because there's nothing you can really do about their losses. Their losses were very small, very, very close games. They couldn't finish in the second half against the Cardinals. They were very close against the Chargers, was a divisional opponent, and they just couldn't get it done this Sunday. So it goes again with what the Lions are dealing with. They're there, they just can't finish their games, and someone has to win by the end of the game. So a lot of games can go either way. But right now, the Raiders are the only 0-3 team, so it's only right if I put them here at 32. 31, Texans, the other only winless team. I have them at F tier too. And if you go on my Instagram page, you'll be able to see why I have certain teams in certain tiers. I evened it out so it's kind of like a pyramid, but not really. So you have more teams in the middle of the pack, and then as you go down tiers and as you go up tiers, you have less and less teams. And so like S tier only has 3 teams, F tier only has 3 teams, B tier A tier only has 5 or 6, D tier only has 5 or 6, and then so on and so forth. And so I have Texans in the F tier, and I think Texans are, they're playing better than what everyone expected, and they're playing really good. They're playing good ball. It's just, again, they can't get it done, but they held Broncos, which really hasn't been difficult for many teams to do, is hold the Broncos offense, because again, Broncos are just learning, getting to know each other, like actually getting to know each other in the offense, and Hackett's very struggling. But for the Texans' sake, they've definitely fought hard, and they've definitely played better than last year. And I feel like these young guys like Pitre and Stingley and Pierce are all like kind of like gearing the team towards a better future, which is good to see. And I think we knew that they'd do that early. We just didn't know it would be this early that these rookies are doing this good. But I think the Texans definitely could be like a a team that is kind of like not middle of the pack, but a little bit under average. If they just keep playing like this, because they're kind of like the Lions or the Raiders, where the games are really close, they just can't finish it. They played very well against the Bears, played very well against the Broncos, and again they tied with their divisional rival, and they fought back to get to overtime, or not overtime. Fought back to get overtime, and then neither team could put it away. But Texans definitely have a bright future, and they definitely could go somewhere with what they're doing. Next up, I have the Commanders. This is the 1 and 2 team that I have in the F tier. I think you can argue the Jets can be there, but after their week 2 performance and after like their young guys stepping up, I feel like the Jets, if we're thinking long term, Jets have a better future than the Commanders, and that's just how it is. But again, Commanders still have young talent as well that is stepping up, like Jahan Dotson. Brian Robinson was stepping up in the preseason, but now we could probably see him. Brian Robinson came to name first because he's been working really hard to get back to where he was in the preseason, but I can't really think of someone off the top of my head. I'm sure there's somebody I'm forgetting. Jahan Dotson was definitely a big name for the Commanders that stepped up week 1 and his rookie debut. But for me, the Commanders don't have the brightest of futures, and especially like short term for this season. They have a little bit tougher schedule because of how they performed last year. So we'll have to see where they last this year. Their defense not playing up to par. Offense struggled after that week 1 performance. And they did good. I mean, like the Jaguars defense the last 2 weeks has held their opponents to only like, I think it's 13 on average points. And again, Jaguars' young defensive talents like Trayvon Walker and Devin Lloyd are stepping up to the plate and making those teams better off the rip. And again, Commanders did very well against Jaguars defense that has been playing very well week 2, week 3. So I don't know. And it's kind of like the Vikings in a sense. Like first week they showed up. Offense showed up to play. Offense was just, and we're like, oh, Wentz is definitely going to work in this offense. I mean, even though they're playing a weaker Jaguars team, which now they're 2-1. The Jaguars are 2-1. We thought they were week 1, but now we are coming to find out the Jaguars are not as weak as we thought. But they were, again, so if this is a better defense, then that means the Commanders' offense was doing something right week 1. It wasn't a fluke. But here's the thing. Week 2, week 3, they couldn't score. They couldn't score the ball and get I mean, they had negative passing yards in the third quarter of that that week 3 game against the Eagles. And this is a divisional rival who they know. And Carson Wentz definitely knows. He played on that team. He knows them. It shouldn't have been like finding out your team, because this is the familiarity. Hard word to say. Familiarity is there. You just got to put the pieces together, and I don't know what happened to the Commanders on Sunday. Next, we got Jets. The Jets are my last D team. So, well, not last D team. You know what I mean? They're the first D team, and they're 29th. I think the Jets have somewhere they can go with what they're dealing with, but the Garrett Wilson injuries and I think who else had an injury on their offense? I can't think of who. But no, Garrett Wilson was playing out of his mind, especially week 2. He was playing out of his mind, and that's what they needed out of him. That's what they drafted him 10th overall for. Sauce Gardner's locking down top wide receivers. Again, what they expected out of them. So their rookies are playing up to expectation, exactly what they needed. Now they just need those veterans to perform as they should. Joe Flacco came in week 2, performed how he should. Week 3, they just struggled how we expect them to. Like, week 2 was just amazing to watch because that's not the same Jets team that we've been watching for the last couple of years. And they did it with a veteran quarterback that has a Super Bowl ring, has been in multiple playoff games. And that's kind of what they needed to start, because if you have such young talent and such young players with no NFL experience on the field, you need someone like Joe Flacco to kind of get them going. And that's what's nice, and that's why the Jets picked up Joe Flacco, is Joe Flacco can help Zach Wilson. And hopefully Zach Wilson can actually learn a couple of things while he's out. I heard a story about where Steve Young, he was talking about, I think it was the Trey Lance. I don't know. It was a Trey Lance situation. He was talking about how when he was out, when he was out and the QB2 was in, he actually learned some things and learned not to do extra stuff and learned actually that he needed to focus more on the basic stuff. I think he was talking about Dak Prescott and how he should learn from Cooper Rush, because Cooper Rush is doing the basics and it's working. They're 2-1. So Dak Prescott should learn the basics from Cooper Rush. And that's what he means by should be learning from Cooper Rush. He should be focusing on the basics, because you have these QBs like Dak Prescott, Russell Wilson, he was younger, Kyler Murray. They're all trying to make those special plays and make those extra plays that a lot of teams would love to have, but they want to make sure they have all the basic stuff first, and they want someone that, and there's QBs that are just known for, just getting you this basic stuff that you need, not doing extra stuff, which is your Ryan Tannehills, your Jimmy Garoppolo's, your Carson Wentz. But that's what a NFL team wants. They don't want all this extra stuff, but if they get the extra stuff, they're not going to, be displeased with it. But that's what I'm saying is Zach Wilson will be able to, going back to what I was saying, Zach Wilson will be able to learn from Joe Flacco, and maybe he'll learn some those little facets of the game that maybe he wasn't getting at the beginning, because NFL experience is big. It is really big. Dolphins exposed the Bills in the second quarter because not a lot of those young guys that were playing in the Bills secondary, all of them had a total combined of 3 NFL game experience, and they were kind of gassed in the second half. Therefore, Tua and Waddle and Tyreek were able to expose them, and Mike Gesicki, and they won the game. Next, I have the Lions. I think the Lions can be more better than 27, most certainly. And again, they're dealing with the same thing as last year, where they're close. They're really close to winning their games. It's just a matter of being able to put it away. They let the Vikings come back last week. But they played very well in week 2, and I was very proud of how they played in week 2, and that showed that they deserve to be a higher ranked team. They just got to put the pieces together, and again, they're all young. I think they're the youngest NFL team. I think that's what I read, is they're the youngest team in the league. So again, they just got to put stuff together, and I think Jared Goff is their QB that they want to do this with, but obviously not in the future. But for now, I think he is the perfect QB for this team. Falcons, not much to say about them other than they played played very well against the Rams. They almost came back from a 28-3 deficit, which would have been funny and ironic. But this team just needs to get something going offensively, differently, like scheming wise. And I think their defense is playing better than it ever has, which is good to see. And they don't have, that firepower. They have Grady Jarrett. Deion Jones is playing a little bit better. But other than that, and I think they have Casey Hayward, who is, he's always going to play. He's very consistent. He's one of the most consistent corners in the league, especially at his age. But this Falcons team needs to start using Kyle Pitts more, get him going. They're getting the ball to the receivers, right? And Drake London's playing really good too. So they're getting the ball to the right, the right receivers. The problem is they need to get Kyle Pitts going, and they need to establish a run game. How are they going to do that? They need to make, they need to do something to get a running game going, because right now they don't. All they have is Cordell Patterson, which, by the way, got them the first down to solidify the win against the Seahawks on Sunday. But they need a running back by committee, another back that they can trust with the ball. Just using Cordell Patterson is not going to work. And Cordell Patterson is nice. Don't get me wrong. Cordell Patterson is one of the most versatile positional players in the league. So it's always nice to have him. If you have him on your team, that is a plus. But if he's your only running back, then that's a problem. They had Mike Davis. They got rid of him. Mike Davis was kind of like that guy that could be like, oh, I can't. Okay, we'll give it to him. He can get us a couple yards. Not asking too much from him, but if we need those yards, we'll get it from him because he's a veteran running back and he knows how to get a couple yards no matter what. But yeah, I think the Falcons offensively need to step it up if they want to get to the middle of the pack, because that's at least where I see them if they start playing better. Because again, they were listed as like one of the top teams to do the worst. I didn't believe that. I don't think they'll be the worst, but they're playing like they could be the middle of the pack. They just got to step it up and win their games, which is the same thing for a lot of these lower teams. There's a couple little pieces they need to put together, and they're actually winning these games that they've been losing. And because it's not like these teams that are just at my bottom of the barrel. It's not like they're just horrible and they can't win a game and blah blah blah, and they're just they're losing by so much. They're getting destroyed. Their defense isn't there. It's non-existent. No, it's more so there's little things that they're not putting together that's allowing them to win. They're losing solely based on these little aspects of the game that if they have, right, they could be such a better team. Next, I have the Panthers, which I think Panthers and Falcons, you can argue, are about the same team right now. Not much difference between the two. I really do like how the Panthers played on Sunday. They really showed that they are still that they're still a lower mediocre team, that they can be a better team, especially with their young defense, and like their defense can be better than advertised. They just have to establish that offense. That offense needs to be established. And Baker Mayfield needs to get, the chemistry going between him, Robbie, DJ. And if Christian McCaffrey's healthy, they need to make sure he's established immediately into the game. Like, they need to get him the ball. He needs to be like a Cooper Kupp pretty much. Get him the ball all the time. That way they're worried about him, and then DJ Moore can go off, because you have all those pieces like DJ Moore, Christian McCaffrey, and Robbie Anderson, but if you're not using them right, then it's not going to work. So, and we already know that Matt Rule's probably gone after this season, so we'll have to see what they do to make, those changes and how they adapt to what they're dealing with right now, but that win they got was very necessary towards their growth, and especially if it's a divisional rival who I have over them. So that was very substantial that they won that game on Sunday. Next, I have the Titans, which is my last D team. You can argue Titans and Steelers are about the same team because they both really aren't. They're both very struggling on offense right now. A lot of their, their possessions and their scores are based off their defense, and I believe their possession times are some of the lowest in the league. So, and again, you have these mediocre quarterbacks or these like guys that are just there to get it done, get it needed. Titans and Steelers, they're just based off their defense. And that's kind of how people are arguing the Broncos are too. But I think the Broncos offense will get it together. I don't know if these two teams, the Steelers and the Titans, I don't know if they get their offenses together. But Steelers definitely struggle. And I have Steelers as C tier, which you can argue D tier. But again, I was doing a pyramid thing, so it was evened out. I had the Titans initially in C, but I changed it so I could even it out. Steelers, I think if they do get that offense together, they could be a playoff team. But because of how good their defense is, I think their defense is better than the Titans, and that's why I kind of edged them over. But their losses, the Patriots and the Browns, it's not like they were getting killed. Very close games. But their defense kept them in it. And their offense just struggled. Mitch can't find George Pickens. DJ and Claypool are having to Pickens had to make that insane catch. How about that catch against the Browns? They have to make these insane catches because Mitch is not being accurate. They're not using Matt Canada, the Steelers' offensive coordinator, is not using this newly mobile quarterback correctly. They're not scheming it correctly. They're making bad plays on third down. It's not looking good for their offense. And until they get that put together, I don't see them making the playoffs. But right now I have them at 24, which is not really near the playoffs at all. Well, actually, no. Yeah, it's nowhere near the playoffs. I'm tripping. Patriots, kind of similar. They started struggling on offense. Now they're out with Mac Jones is out. Defense playing better than expected, but it's still they're such a mediocre team. Like right now, they're just such a mediocre team. I had a feeling they would kind of fall off from last year, but I didn't think it would be this bad. I didn't understand the hype. Well, the opposite of hype. I didn't understand it of why these Patriots would be doing so bad, but I kind of understood that Mac Jones was kind of have a sophomore fall off, but we'll have to see where they go because this team is very strange. I think how they played against the Steelers was how they should have been playing against the Ravens and the Dolphins, but I don't know what was going on in every game, so I don't know exactly why the Patriots are struggling in that sense, but I know that Matt Patricia and Mac Jones are not, coexisting exactly how they wanted them to. And I think Matt Patricia probably gone either mid-season or after the season. I think that it just isn't working. And I think just Bill needs to call the plays. Because they don't get Damian Harris going as much as they need to. And I think Devontae Parker is starting to find himself as their wideout one. But I think the spread of getting the ball to the other receivers, and again, Steelers are struggling with this as well, getting the ball to other receivers' hands is what they're struggling with. And And what do we see out of Patrick Mahomes once Tyreek was gone? Is he just spread the ball? So if you don't have that, that established wide out one, or you don't have the greatest of wide receivers names, you just got to spread the ball out. You got to spread it out, and get it to different receivers. It could be literally anybody that's on the field. Like, just scheme the play so you have receivers getting different looks, and you don't have that same route tree for every receiver. And the problem is the Patriots and the Steelers and the Titans, teams like this, they can't spread the ball out. I think Seahawks, because of how good they've been playing offensively, besides expectation, and their defense playing better. And it's just like, again, this is power rankings. This is based off expectation. We didn't expect the Seahawks to play this good. And they're playing pretty well with, considerably a QB2 who I had at 32 before this season. And it's just amazing to watch how good they're actually playing. Other than, they did lose to the Falcons on Sunday, but they're definitely playing better than what we thought. They still have DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, and they can still build off of that. But they don't have those crazy big name players, but they're still playing above standards, and that's amazing, and that's cool to see. So I have them above teams like the Patriots, Steelers, and Titans. And then I have the Colts, which is a weird one because they're 1-1-1-1. But I think if they don't win the Chiefs, I have them really down low, and I think that Chiefs game really shows that they can get stuff put together, and Michael Pittman can get Michael Pittman going, and Jonathan Taylor is still a consistent running back. But they just have to. A lot of these teams, they're in new situations. They're just trying to figure stuff out, and that's typically how the Packers roll when they're playing. They're just not a September team. They're just trying to get stuff. They're trying stuff out. They're testing it out, making sure people stay healthy. They're not putting them in, rushing them in, and then they start getting it going. So these Colts teams, Broncos team, all these teams that are new, completely different situations, need to figure stuff out first. Get the chemistry going, get the locker room going, and understanding these playbooks and understanding how the schemes work. And just understanding each other, and once they get that down, they're gonna look like completely different teams, and we might see completely different teams in October, November, December. And I think Colts are one of those teams where it's like right now they're struggling, but what they did against the Chiefs shows they can, if they're on the right track, if they're working together and playing based off each other's abilities, they can pull out a win against a really good team. So they can, be that playoff contender team that can, beat any team. That's not a problem that they have. But I have the Cardinals a little bit ahead of them. And this kind of comes from like a little bit of the week 2 bias. Week 2, they looked amazing, and how they were able to come back. They just looked like that's like the team that we saw when they were 7-0. That's the team we saw when they were not losing a game. They were just offensively, aggressive and going after, and they got 2-point attempts complete to complete that comeback and then win in overtime. That, like, they're aggressive. Like, they're just like at your throat, and that's what they need to be offensively. That's what they need to represent, and kind of like have an intimidating factor again for the, like, when you're playing against these teams. And if that can be what they, like what their symbol, I don't know how to explain this, but if that can be how, like, what they're symbolic of, just being super, aggressive offensively, they can run with that and like beat some of these better teams like that. I mean, I know the Raiders are 0-3, but it's like they were losing. I don't remember the number. Sorry. But I don't remember the number. But they won by 20, or they came back from 20 so points. And that's not an easy feat. So for them to come back and accomplish that was an amazing thing to watch. And I think if we just see more of that, we could see. And I mean, if they have to play desperate to play this good, then play desperate, play more, like risky, and that's just what we need to see from the Cardinals if they want to, become a playoff contender. Because I mean, like after week 1, everyone was writing them off. Oh, we knew it. We knew these Cardinals wouldn't play as good. We knew they wouldn't have no 7-0 start again. We knew that they'd struggle, but I mean, they played very well against the Rams, but unfortunately they couldn't pull it off. It's whatever. But I think they definitely have a chance at becoming a better team this year. I'm at 19 now. Another C team. These 3 teams kind of all in the same ballpark. Especially another team as well. But I have them in B tier. But Bengals, Chargers, Saints. Bengals 19, Chargers 18, Saints 17. Bengals are a weird one. I mean, after the Cowboys lost, everyone was writing them off. Super Bowl hangover. Blah, 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 blah. Line sucks. Burrow is struggling, especially because the line and Micah Parsons, dude. We could talk about him all day. I mean, dude has won 56% of his battles at the line. Like, what? Like, that's an insane stat. He tops everybody by at least 10%. Then I don't remember who the next guy is, but it's around 43%, and he's about 56. So it's a whole 13% above the next guy in the NFL. So I mean, we could truly see a Defensive Player of the Year award go to Micah Parsons after this year, because he is just on a rampage. He is ready to just destroy any offensive line. I mean, he is hungry. But no, like, Bengals struggled against Micah Parsons. They struggled week 1 against the Steelers defense, and TJ Watt was getting to him. So TJ Watt, Micah Parsons causing, so that pass, so their pass protection, very, very weak. I think they need to get Mixon going more. That's truly because when they did that against the Steelers, it was working up until a point, and then that game went how that game went. So I mean, nothing they can really do there. But if they get Mixon going first, then get Jamar Chase going, because Jamar Chase struggled week 3 as well, week 2 and week 3. So. But at least they got their first win, because it was looking pretty bad. And a lot of these, people were criticizing them already after 2 losses, because, they were just in the Super Bowl, and now they're losing 2 games in a row, week 1 and week 2. But next I have, like I said, the Chargers. Chargers are a weird one as well. I had them as 3 in their power ranking, and they're 1 and 2. So that kind of sucks for my part. But they're dealing with a lot of injuries right now, kind of like the Patriots. But they can definitely play better ball. It's very strange to see them struggle against teams like the Jaguars and the Chiefs. Well, not the Chiefs, because that's a good divisional game and that was fun to watch. But they struggled offensively against the Jaguars, but didn't struggle offensively against the Chiefs. And you might say it's because Justin Herbert was not 100%, and their line was getting hurt as well. Rashawn Slater's out, I think, for the year. So I mean, Storm Norton had to go in. So I mean, you can argue that their line's now not as good as it was. And I don't know exactly how Zion Johnson, the new rookie guard they have, that is doing, but I think he was doing well up until a point. But their defense just not playing as well as they were supposed to, and everyone was talking about, oh well, they're stopping the run game, and the run game's good, and Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack are a great combo, and they're stopping the run, getting sacks, blah blah blah, and then and then James Robinson and Travis Etienne exposed them. Etienne, oh my gosh, how do you pronounce his name? They just exposed the rush defense, and Trevor Lawrence played very well, and it was very good to see. And I actually have Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars very high. So, next we have the Saints. Saints are a weird team in a sense that they, week 1 they played very well, came back and won. And Michael Thomas playing very well. James Winston's not, throwing all these interceptions. And then week 2, their offense is just lackluster. Week 3, they're having all these turnovers. And it seems like they're a very inconsistent team. Defensively, they're playing very well, and we already knew that was we already expected that. Held Buccaneers to a couple, offense. They held them to lackluster performances, but they can't just trust everything on this defense, and they need the offense to, commit less turnovers and to start, actually, scoring. And it just seems like Jameis Winston's very inconsistent, but they have all these receivers and they don't use them properly. So who knows? Alvin Kamara, I don't know exactly how he did on Sunday, but they need more out of him too. 49ers, even though they're 1-2, I have them in the B tier, but last night when they played against the Broncos, their defense just showed that they're a top-tier defense, and I love to watch that. I know you might, and again, but they're playing the Broncos. The Broncos are struggling on offense. How are they a top-tier defense? I mean, what they did on Monday or Sunday Night Football really, really solidified that they're a top-tier defense. But and then what they and I heard a lot of people making this argument. Jimmy G only played good in week 2 because they didn't have him game planned. No team, but after week 1, Broncos game planned, and he couldn't do anything. And that might be a good argument. Jimmy G might now be, exposed, and like they might know how to game plan against him and understand how easy it is to, defend him. But there's also an argument that it just was, a fluke, and that was like a game where it's just a bad game, and everyone has their bad games, so you never know. We have to see week 4. If Jimmy G struggles again, then it's likely that this team will struggle all year, but you never know. I think their defense can hold them to a point where they can be still above the middle of the pack or playoff team. We just have to see how they can perform on offense for the rest of the season. A lot of these teams that I'm ranking, they have the defense, they just don't have the offense, and that's a lot of it's just what we've been seeing these first couple weeks is these offenses struggling with their new situations or certain like they're like it just feels like the defense is just stepping up, and and that's what I heard a lot in the preseason practices, that all these the offenses, like in all their all these team practices were like, oh, our defense is playing really good, but our offense can't win any series against the defenses. And then everyone's like, oh, it's just because we have a better defense. But then when it comes to shove, we get in an actual NFL game, and yes, these offenses are struggling against these defenses, and it just seems like the defense is at a certain point where they're higher, and the offenses are lower, and you just have that like in the NFL, because there's a certain point when you get to such a high level of gameplay that you have one side of the ball at a higher level than the other side of the ball, and it kind of like balances like a seesaw. So then you'll have those years where the offenses are just destroying NFL defenses. But right now it feels like the defenses as a whole are just overall better than an NFL offense. And that's that's why we have only 1-0-3 team after week 1 is a lot of these teams are able to keep other teams at low scores. So then you have other teams that, might be going 0-3, 0-4 first couple weeks. They're getting wins because their defenses are just playing very good, and they're leaving the offense less scoring. Therefore, you have less scoring games. Therefore, you can't have a team just go, blowing past the team in the first couple quarters. That way, there's a chance for it to teeter-totter and a certain team get a certain win. I have the Jaguars, which I talked about. They played so good week 3 and a little bit of recency bias, but I think with their young talent, they can only go so far. Like, they can go so far. There's not much of a ceiling for them. It's they just got to keep working hard. It's just like they fired on all cylinders in week 3. And if we keep seeing more out of them like this, I don't see why they couldn't be a playoff contender this year. As weird as that sounds, they literally just had the number 1 overall pick last year. But what did we see from the Bengals? They had number 1 overall pick 2 years later. They're in the Super Bowl. So it can happen. It can happen where you have these lower teams that, they're getting these draft picks and they're like, oh, it's just a couple rookies. They're not going to make the team much better. But they make those additions like Brandon Scherf or Christian Kirk. They make those additions, and Darius Williams, I believe, as well, too. But you make those additions. Is it Darius Williams? Yes, Darius Williams. Unless he's on the... Dude, I can't remember. Let me look this up real quick. But if you have those teams where, they just make the additions, they get a couple draft picks, and they rebuild correctly, they will come back firing. And yes, Darius Williams is on the Jaguars. But those additions that you make, whether it be free agency, trading, or drafts, actually matter. And it could either be for the best or for the worst. And as we saw with the Bengals, they had it for the best. The next year, they're seeming to have it for the worst because their offensive line is just struggling, and they were supposed to be this new, really well developed offensive line that they got pieces from all around the league. So it really is key. It really is key. All these additions. And that's why, NFL trades, man. We go over stuff that is important to how your football team is going to play on Sunday. Like, it is very important because they might work perfectly, they might work horribly, or they might just work in that system how they need to and how they want or how they should. And it really it depends. It all depends on certain circumstances and how they work in the environment. But that's my point is free agency and trades and drafting can go a long way for certain teams. And now we're seeing examples where the Bengals and Jaguars are showing that because they're having an immediate impact. Now we're into top 14, which is your playoff teams. So right now, as of now, yeah, I guess you could say as of now they're the playoff teams, but I didn't do it based off conference. So this is just the top 14. Giants, Bears, they're in their same little tier. This is my B. Yeah, Jaguars and 49ers and B. So I have still a B. Bears and Giants a B. Giants, again, you could argue are not as good as the other teams, but I'm going off based off record. They're 2-1 right now. And it looks kind of like they deserve it. They beat a Panthers team, they beat a Titans team, and those teams, I mean, I have them ranked under them, but they're still showing that they can, if they get Saquon going, and they're using all their receivers correctly. Brian Dable is coaching the team properly. I mean, if they get all that stuff going, and their defense that's really young, is firing on all cylinders, then you have a pretty decent team. And again, this is another year where it's like, if Daniel Jones doesn't perform as well as he needs to, then you might see him gone. But Daniel Jones is trying his hardest to make plays and do what he needs to do to make this team better and allow him to stay here as a franchise quarterback. And, you have people like Kenny Galladay or Sterling Shepard or not Sterling Shepard. He's not there. I'm tripping. Darius Slayton. I mean, you have these guys that are just struggling, and they're supposed to be their top-tier wide receivers. And I think it's just time where they move on from those guys and they go to Wan'Dale Robinson, Kadarius Toney. They just move on and start anew, and keep Saquon and just keep DJ for this year and see how he does, and just continue to light it up. And I think this team is definitely doing way better than anybody expected, and that's always nice to see, because a lot of teams had them bottom of the barrel. Or not teams, a lot of people had them bottom of the barrel. And to see them in my power ranking at 14 is definitely surprising. Same with the Bears. A lot of people had them bottom of the barrel too. Their offense is struggling, definitely, and Darnell Mooney struggling. Justin Fields not able to really. I mean, they're passing. I mean, they're averaging around 70 yards. And the next team in the league is like 150. So, I mean, they're struggling heavily on pass game, and it goes with, their offensive line's just always been horrible. So, but their defense playing up to standards, that's expected. But it just comes down to their offense, and it comes down to how they're going to play. But, they beat the Texans, which not really that much of an accomplishment, but they did it. They got it done. It was close, but they got it done. They beat a good 49ers team, which, you might argue it was weather that, allowed them to do that, but they beat them. And they played pretty well against, my gosh, why can't I remember these things? Who do they play week 2? Who do they play week 2? Why can't I remember these things? Oh my gosh, I can't remember who they played week 2. 1 second. Sometimes you just forget things. Yeah, Green Bay, again, struggles in week 1. They struggle in September, but it's a rival game. Green Bay is definitely going to play. They're going to put more into it, put more emphasis into it. So, I predicted that Justin Fields would struggle against Green Bay, and it's just the defense stepped up, and that's what the Green Bay is actually playing based off. They're playing based off the defense stepping up and playing as a top-tier defense, and that's how they have their team oriented. And when you have a lackluster offense going against a defensive-oriented team, you're usually something is not going to go your way. So that's why they lost 27-10. Just couldn't get anything going on offense. But they beat San Francisco 19-10. They beat Houston 23-20. They're finishing their games. That's good to see. But when they go up against a top-tier team, how are they going to play offensively? How are they going to, a top defensive team? How are they going to really, try and pick apart the defense? And it seems like if a team has a really good defense, they're not going to win that game. And that's how it seems right now, as of now. But other than that, their defense is playing really well, and they're still doing stuff on offense. Justin Fields still running the ball, facilitating pretty well. It's just they got to get it going on with the passing, and that's just something. And again, they don't have a line that can allow them to do that. Just like the Bengals, their line is not allowing for that type of stuff. Justin Fields is coming out of the pocket almost every play. He just is discouraged to stay in the pocket because of how bad the line is. Next, I have I have Cowboys and they're playing very well. Cooper Rush just doing what he needs to do. Cowboys are still a really good team. It's just they're dealing with some injuries, like what's his name? Tyron Smith's out for the year. My Gallup hasn't returned yet. And I just think that they can be a really good team because they are really well-rounded. It's just a matter of can they get things going offensively. And, Cooper Rush has just been doing just enough for them to, get stuff done and win their games. But I think if Dak Prescott comes back, and he's, heating up, this team could be very, very unstoppable. I really do believe it. It's just a matter of time till we find out if this Cowboys team can be like this, because after week 1, everyone was writing them off after their lackluster performance against the Buccaneers. But again, that Buccaneers defense is something else. Next up, we have the Browns at 10, another B-tier team, and we have Vikings at 9, our last B-tier team. Browns, Vikings, I think they show that they can, the Browns defense is playing very well. And Jacoby Brissett, surprisingly is starting play pretty well. And again, he's doing what he needs to do to get this done. So he's kind of like that Ryan Tannehill or Jimmy Garoppolo, where he's doing what he needs to do to win their games, and he's not doing anything extra. He's just, facilitating his team. He's a leader, and that's what they were saying is he's a good leader. And he's what this Browns team needs right now. Browns, their run game is there. Mari Cooper's getting going, so that's good for them. And their line, pretty well-rounded. Even with a backup center, they're still playing pretty good offensively. And their defense is pretty well too. So, they're not really, really good in one aspect, but they're above average on both sides of the ball. So they're definitely a very well-rounded team. Vikings, after week 1, we thought they were going to be one of the best teams in the league, but they do end up struggling the next 2 weeks. So even though they won, they came back against the Lions. It shouldn't have been like that. They should be taking the lead early against a team like that. And to see them kind of struggle offensively and only have Justin Jefferson a couple yards in the first half, that really is a problem. And a lot of teams with these big name receivers and running backs just couldn't get them the ball in the first half on Sunday, and it was really odd to watch. And again, it's these defenses are just at a certain different tier that offenses can't match right now, and that's just currently the state of where football. That's currently at where the football is, at what state it is. It's just the defense is at a different level. Now I'm into my A-tier teams, which is the Bucs at 8, Packers at 7, Rams at 6, Ravens at 5, and then Chiefs at 4. I had Chiefs in S tier, but again, I changed it for that pyramid. Equality, it would just make it equal. So there's 3 teams at S tier and F tier. Bucks, again, like I said, top tier defense. They still have Brady, but they've been struggling because the receivers have been dealing with injuries on the receiver side. Fournette's doing his thing. Their line's still, I mean, they've been struggling a lot with their line because a lot of injuries. They had retirements, injuries. So now they are struggling with pass rush. But Brady showed that when they're desperate, they can get it done. It's just, you just got to work on some little things. And, Brady's dealing with a lot with the divorce, struggling with the line. I mean, the Packers should have been able to expose them more on Sunday. But I think if the Bucs are, not dealing with those little issues, those minor issues, they actually are a way better team. Next I have, which is the team that beat them. I feel like I had to put them above them, which is the Packers. And again, like I said, they're not a September team. They never have been. They never are. So push comes to shove, they are going to be a better team when it comes to October, November, December. Aaron Rodgers will get stuff going. He just needs to learn how to work with these young receivers, and he started getting it going a little bit on Sunday. But again, they're still struggling offensively. Now with Watson hurt, he can't get those snaps with Watson, but he needs to just develop Romeo Doubs, keep getting Alan Lazard more touches, and go to his man Randall Cobb. And just learn, because right now, I mean, he without Devontae Adams, he just doesn't feel like he has that guy that he can trust and go to whenever he needs it, and whenever he's like, oh, I can't go to these young, it's basically Aaron Rodgers has just been like, I'm gonna go to these young guys, but if I need to, I have Devontae Adams, and I'm gonna use him as much as need be. But he doesn't. He's like, oh, I don't have that now. I don't have a Devontae Adams, so now it's like I don't have that solidified guy that I can go to if something is going wrong or if we're struggling. So offensive struggles, defense is stepping it up, which they want to see. Defensive-oriented team, as much as Aaron Rodgers doesn't want to admit that, they're a defensive-oriented team. But Devondre Campbell playing out of his mind. Jared wasn't out. Jared wasn't playing in week 3, and they still played very well. The secondary played very well. Rasul Douglas played good. Eric Stokes played good. I mean, it was good to see them how they were playing against Tom Brady and the Buccaneers. But when they have Mike Evans back, maybe Chris Godwin back, you might see a different Buccaneers team. Next, we have the Rams. Rams getting back from the Super Bowl hangover. They're playing better now. They beat a rival. They made sure Falcons didn't come back, but I don't think Falcons should even came from they shouldn't even got to that point. But definitely getting the pieces back together that they were missing. Those holes they definitely couldn't fill them, but now they're trying to they're advancing. They're adapting to the holes that they were missing from guys like Von Miller, OBJ, or Andrew Whitworth. They're adapting to figuring out what do we do now that we don't have these guys? Because game 1, Bills are exposing all those little things that they didn't have that they had last year in the Super Bowl. And it's okay, well, now that we don't have these things, how do we adapt? And it seems like they're adapting well, and they're making sure that that's not a reason why they're losing these crucial games, because they're definitely a top-tier team, and they need to win these early games on. They don't want to see themselves, later on going to try and win games and get a playoff spot, because they are definitely they're still a contender in my eyes. They just need to continue and adapt to what they are missing from last year and just add on to it and figure out what do we need to do. I'm going to hurry up go a little bit quicker. We're low on time. I think the Bills and Chiefs, I think you could argue, are about the same team. They just always have been. I think if you put these two together, you'll have a different result every time. And it will go either way. These two teams are very similar in a sense that they are just offensively juggernauts, and their defenses. The Chiefs' defense is just playing so much better than what we expected, and it's fun to watch because because we're not used to it. I mean, we're used to Patrick Mahomes just slinging the ball, and then the other team going back and trying their hardest, and they get a score and it's just Patrick Mahomes fighting against the other team every time because he's having to keep putting points on the board because their defense is not playing up to par. But now, he can feel more comfortable because their defense is playing better. And so that's what they need if they want to be a Super Bowl contender again, is they need a defense to play up to par. Their offense is playing really good. I mean, the same, if not better, without Tyreek Hill. And he's spreading the ball, like I said. Wasn't much of a ball spreader with Tyreek Hill. Now he's spreading the ball more. Travis Kelce is still the best tight end in the league, playing very consistent. He's getting him the ball. Not a problem. Shouldn't be a problem. Those two have such a good connection. Juju's playing good. Marcus Valdez-Scantling's playing good. Cole Harmon. They're all playing how they should, and that's why they're a top tier team. They did struggle against the Colts, but it's not like, and like I said, the Colts are not going to be a bottom low tier team. It's once they get things going, and they figured stuff out on Sunday, so that's why they beat the Chiefs. So now if the Chiefs, they didn't lose to such a horrible team, and they're going to lose a couple of those games this year, but I think they're going to be a top tier team this year. It's just a matter of, and again, I mean, I don't think the Chiefs change much this year. I think they're going to be a consistent team. I think what we're seeing now is what we're going to see from them in the latter end of the year. But I think the Chiefs are just a different team in the playoffs always. That's always a thing. Chiefs feel like they're unbeatable in the playoffs. I feel like they are. But we know we'll get from the Chiefs. They're very consistent, and we'll have to see. But right now I have them at 4 and under the Bills because that Bills defense, no matter what, they put anybody in there, it's just so good. Because again, Sean McDermott's a defensive-oriented coach, so they know how to have a good defense every year. Von Miller playing very good. Their young guys are stepping up, playing how they need to be. Jordan Poyer's hurt, Micah Hyde's hurt. Doesn't matter. We're still gonna play how we know, how the game knows. So again, that's. I mean, if that's the case, that also. I mean, as much as you might want to say, oh, these young guys are just playing. They're hungry. They want to play. They want to play good because they're on a good team and they don't want to lose to a lower team. I mean, as much as you can say that, it also goes with the coaching. I mean, the coaching's got to be outstanding for them to be able to have such a good defense, no matter who gets put in there. So I mean, and then the Bills' offense just looks unstoppable at times. So if they get the run game going, and that's never been their thing because they're constantly having Josh Allen go for a bunch of rushing attempts. I mean, if they get the run game going, because they didn't have the run game, they had to pass 63 times on Sunday in their loss against the Dolphins because they're constantly having to throw the ball because they don't have a run game. So if your QB is getting more running yards than your running back, then there's a problem. I don't know if he got more than Singletary and Moss combined, or more than Singletary and Moss, whatever, blah, 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 or Cook or whatever. But if they're trying, I mean, they're obviously trying. If they're getting all those three backs some snaps, then they're obviously trying to get the run game going, but it just seems like it's not working. I mean, that's why they should have got Breece Hall in the first round. But, it happens. I mean, that's what everybody was saying. Get Breece Hall in the first round. Get your run game started because that just seems like the issue, and it seems like it's continuing to be the issue. But other than that, they're just such a good team, and I have them at the bottom low of S tier. But that's only because they lost the game. I think Bills are still better than the Dolphins. I think Bills just, they struggled with the minor facets in the game on Sunday against the Dolphins, but I think the Dolphins definitely can be better than the Bills. They just have to keep putting stuff together. But as of now, I think the Bills are a better team than the Dolphins, but I have Dolphins at 2 and Eagles at 1. These are the only 3 owned teams, so I put them at 1-2. But I think Eagles are just the better overall team. And what was A.J. Brown saying early in the preseason? He feels like it's a Pro Bowl team, and I keep thinking about that because I'm like, I mean, like, if you're saying, like, I feel like it's just a Pro Bowl game, then that means it's such high-level competition that you're only going to keep getting better because you're playing against such level competition at practice all the time. So these players are getting better and better and better. They already are considered as better because there's a bunch of big names on that team, and they are exposing teams like Commanders, lighting it off on offense. Jalen Hurts is getting an MVP chance. I mean, they're just Miles Sanders playing consistent. Their line always good. Defense playing above standards. I mean, it's just when you have everyone firing on all cylinders. I'm going to keep saying that because it's literally what it is. Everything's going right, and everything's going right for the Eagles. You know, you can argue some things are going wrong for the Dolphins, and that's why they're getting 40 points put on them against the Ravens, and Bills are putting a bunch of points on them. And I mean, and that's what we kind of expected was the Dolphins to kind of play like a 2019 Chiefs where they're going, they're offensive juggernauts, but they have a lower tier defense. So it's like they're just trying to put points on the board because they know they're going to get, the other team's going to get points back. So that's how this Dolphins team's kind of playing. But this Eagles team is way more well-rounded than the Dolphins. So that's why I have them above the Dolphins. That was my power rankings for the 32 teams, and I hate this early on power rankings, but I just did it because I wanted something to talk about for today. But again, this was just records this is power rankings based off just records. So, you can argue, oh, well, yeah, I know Dolphins are 3-0, but the Chiefs are better and the Bills are better than the Dolphins. I mean, yeah, you can argue that. You can argue the Ravens are better than Dolphins, even if the Dolphins beat the Ravens. You can argue all this stuff. It's just my opinion, and based off the records where I have them, and based off, this team might be a 2-1, and this team might be a 2-1, but this team's clearly better than the other team. So you can have tiers. So I just made the tiers, and I had the tiers differently, but I just wanted to even it out. So that's how it ended up. If you don't like it, whatever, just tell me something, say something in the comments, just tell me, and just acknowledge it's just an opinion. It's just and it's a kind of a prediction of, not really a prediction of how it's literally just like going off what you've seen. I could make predictions because a lot of these teams, again, like I said, they're having struggles, but they'll get it together. They'll get it together in October, and a lot of these teams will have different outcomes in the next couple weeks. It's just a matter of time. So if I made predictions, this list would look completely different than it does now. This is simply just opinions, so don't take it as anything else. Like, oh, this is what I think. You can't think anything else. Please argue. Please talk in the comments, but be civil about it because, literally, that's what I asked for. I just want debates and arguments because that's literally what sports is about, to have, civil debates, not political, civil debates and arguments about sports, because it's like you have the facts, use the facts, argue with it. I mean, that's just simple as that. But no, thanks for listening for today, and I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and it was a long one for sure, and please come back and make sure you're following me on Instagram at NFL Trades or on Twitter at NFL_trades. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.